Hey Most Amazing Top 10 family, I'm your host Iranian and welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. Prison is a scary place. I make YouTube videos and I post stuff on Instagram. There's no way I would last long in a prison. I would probably be dead in 3 days, and I think that's even pushing it. But prisoners can get even crazier than they already are. A prison can go from a containment center that's holding some of the most deadly people on the planet to an all-out war where it's every man for himself. Of course I'm talking about prison riots, and in all this chaos you can sometimes see a little sneaky snake who can get through the cracks and run off to freedom. This has happened enough times that I bring you today's list of top 10 scary prison riots where prisoners escaped. Make sure if you guys are loving this content, you go check us out on our social pages. We have a ton of content over on Instagram and Facebook, and stick around until the end of the video because I'm going to be doing some more pet shoutouts, which you guys love so much. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. And without taking any longer, let's get into this list. At number 10, we have Corona Containment. There was recently a massive riot at a prison in Foggia, Italy. If you have been paying attention to what has been going on with the coronavirus, you will know that Italy has one of the worst outbreaks in the world. So many of the prisons throughout the country have been doing different things to make sure they don't have an outbreak in the prison. One of these things was reducing the amount of visitation that prisoners have from outside family members. It's a pretty simple solution, but inmates didn't like this at all. It was most likely crossed with the stress of coronavirus spreading like wildfire, but the prisoners had enough. They started a riot, and in all the mayhem, 16 prisoners were able to escape and run off to freedom. There were also 12 inmates that managed to break into the confiscated drug area and get super high. Frankly, they got too high. All 12 of them had an overdose. I guess that's one way to do it. You don't want to die in prison or the mayhem of the riot, so you just give yourself a lethal dose of drugs and then send off to another world. At number 9, we have the Arizona Trio. When you break out of jail, you think you'd want to keep a low profile. Like if I was ever in jail and then I broke out, my God, I would be on the run and you wouldn't hear a peep from me. But these guys were different. In 2015, there was a massive riot at the Arizona State Penitentiary, and in all the madness, 3 dudes managed to get outside of the prison. Now, the first thing they did was hide and find new clothes, but not long after they got their disguises figured out, they went and killed a couple that were on vacation in Arizona. They probably needed some money and supplies, but that can't be the smartest way to do it. It didn't take long, but the 3 murderers were caught and eventually sent back to where they just came from. At number 8, we have more COVID fears. As tensions rise about COVID-19 and many of the world's prisons are in terrible conditions, prisoners start to fear for their lives. The Buriram prison in Thailand was one of these places. Prisoners had heard of the worsening conditions of COVID-19 and decided that they weren't going to sit down and die. 100 inmates started to destroy everything in their path in an open area in the prison, until enough inmates and guards got involved. This was a very clever distraction and they were able to escape. This breakdown happened on March 28th, 2020, and it is unclear how many men were able to use this diversion to get out of the prison. A few men were once again detained, but some are still at large. At number 7, we have the Montana State Prison Riot. Now, in this riot, there were a couple near escapes, but no one really got out, but the story is so crazy I had to put it on the list. It's like Bonnie and Clyde meets Shawshank Redemption meets Fast and the Furious 9. In the 1950s, the once great Montana State Prison had become one of the worst hellholes on the planet. The prison was packed to the brim with criminals, and the conditions were so horrible that inmates were constantly getting sick. There were 2 men who devised a plan to either change the prison or escape. It was Jerry Miles. He had been in the prison for so long he was one of the big dogs on campus, and his newly convicted 19-year-old boyfriend Lee Smart. They managed to get their hands on some gasoline from another inmate and created torches, and then they covered a guard in gasoline and threatened to light him on fire. The guard decided to turn over his weapons and keys in exchange for his life. From there, all hell broke loose. A ton of inmates were released from their cells and they killed the deputy warden. Not long after that, the National Guard arrived, and now the inmates were in a standoff. At this time, Miles and Lee and a few other inmates were attempting to tunnel out of the prison. They would have got out if they had only started earlier. The National Guard came in and most of the inmates laid down their weapons and accepted that the riot was over. But Lee and Miles weren't going down without a fight. The 2 ended up dying in a shootout with the National Guard. At number 6, we have ISIS members escaped. This riot just happened. On March 30th, 2020, a group of ISIS members being held at the Iranian prison in northern Syria started a riot. Prior to this happening, there was footage of them holding up a sign to a security camera in their cell. The sign demanded that their human rights be provided. After this display, the inmates were able to break the doors to their cell. They had been chipping away at the sides of the doors in preparation for this. A riot started and several of the Syrian Democratic forces that were guarding the prison were injured. In all the chaos, 12 men escaped, but the Syrian military was unclear about whether or not these men had been recaptured. At number 5, we have the riot in Rio. Back in 2017, tensions were starting to get high at a prison in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. At this particular prison, capacity was for 592 inmates, but 1,224 were in prison there. This, combined with 2 feuding gangs, led to a massive riot where 56 people were killed and many more escaped. The riot was so big that word came down the grapevine to 2 other prisons where the inmates there had riots in response. At one of those prisons, 86 men escaped, and one of the dudes escaping posted a picture of himself on Facebook while he was breaking out. That has to be his new profile picture for sure. At number 4, we have the Sao Paulo State Penitentiary inmates don't like social distancing. With the spread of this deadly virus, there have been a lot of changes. One of those changes was to the inmates at the Sao Paulo State Penitentiary. Many of these inmates are under partial sentences and are allowed to leave on certain days of the week. But with the spread of COVID-19, this freedom was taken away. Well, they were not having it. On March 16th, over 1,000 men rioted and overpowered the guards and broke free of the prison. Almost 200 were rearrested, but it's thought that over 1,000 inmates are still at large. Videos of men running from the prison in orange jumpsuits were posted all over the internet. At number 3, we have the New Mexico State Penitentiary riots. This is known as one of the most brutal riots of all time. During this riot, at least 5 prisoners escaped, but that was just a side story to what was actually going on. Inside the prison, the prisoners went crazy and took over the whole penitentiary. They took hostages. Most of the hostages were prison guards and the rest were inmates. Many prisoners took this time as an opportunity for revenge. There had been several inmates within the prison who had been working as informants to prison guards, and this is a big no-no in the prison world, so anyone who was known to be a rat was killed, and not fast. They were slowly tortured. It took 36 hours, but eventually police were able to regain control of this facility. And number 2, we have the Riots escapees. Here's something I didn't know about Brazil. They have some of the deadliest prison riots in the world. People are frequently killed in prison riots over in Brazil. In 2017, 140 people died in prison riots. And in 2018, there was a massive riot at the prison in the city of Riots. 2 rival gangs started a turf war in the prison and all hell broke loose. 14 people were killed, and of those men, one of them had their head sliced right off his body. During this time, 109 prisoners were able to escape. I also read when something like this happens, the guards just kind of let it happen, because if they try to intervene, they will just end up dying, so they kind of have no choice. For the number 1 spot, we have EDS and the Iranian prison riots. Electronic Data Services was a tech company working in Iran in the 1970s. They had been working with the Shah, and when the Ayatollah decided to storm the country and take control, it was time for EDS to get out of there. But in the process of trying to get everyone out, 2 American workers were captured, William Gaylord and Paul Chiperon. William Gaylord and Paul Chiperon were now locked up in an Iranian prison, which is probably a hell I can't even imagine. The American government wasn't going to step in, so it looked like both these men were lost to this horror, even though they committed no crime. Well, thankfully, they had the best boss in the world. Ross Perlott was the CEO and was determined to get his men free from this prison. He paid a mercenary to get a rebel group together to storm the prison. This caused a riot, and then the 2 men were able to escape. Dude, how has this not been a movie yet? All right, everyone, that has been our list, and as promised, I'm going to be doing some more pet shoutouts. Remember, if you want me to shout out your pet, you can hit me up on Instagram. I pick new pets every day, so if you don't get picked one day, you can message back another day. I usually pick who has messaged last, so the best way to do it is just like message me again if you didn't get picked. That's your best option. And if it takes me a little while to get back to you, I am very sorry, because I have a lot of these to do. And without taking any longer, let's get into this list. Alright, to start it off, we have Boomer, who's a nice little floofer boy with some great hair. I love it. Then we have Dusty, who's one of the cutest little guinea pigs I have ever seen. Look at how shiny his coat is. That is a very healthy guinea pig. After that, we have an amazing picture of Skip. The black and white is so good, and I love his little hat. Oh my god. Next, we have Astro in one of the most romantic photos I have ever seen. This looks like it was pulled right out of a movie. And to close it out, we have this super happy pic here. Look at how beautiful this one is, just enjoying the weather. Oh my god. All right, that has been our list. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, guys, I would love it if you could like, comment, subscribe, and hit the little notification bell. Until next time, I've been your host, Che Arena, and I don't know, stay out of prison. It's scary. Bye.